Let's start recording. All right. So are there any questions before we begin? Not hearing anything, so let's begin. Today is October 24th, and in the lab today, we're supposed to be discussing the unknown project, and I will hopefully begin it. Hopefully I'll get the numbers out to you. I guess I got to get that set up. So hopefully tonight I'll send that out to you, and then you will also be beginning hopefully the gelatin hydrolysis test tonight. Any questions about any of that? All right. Let's go to the unknown project. Let me show you where you can get that in the class. It's either week 5 or 6 of the lab. It's week 5 lab. The unknown instructions is what I'm going to talk about. You will need to do this project using a dichotomous key, and this is how you make a dichotomous game plan, meaning this project will be using dichotomous logic, and if you don't use dichotomous logic, you'll get a penalty. And I'll tell you what dichotomous logic is in just a minute. This is something helpful to view. That's the unknown list. And let me think. I don't think I have that. So I might need to download that. Oh, good. The lecture is finished making its file, so my computer will speed up now. Oh, I do. Open that up. All right, I think that's it. Any questions about the unknown project so far? There's a grading rubric. We might touch on that later today. The unknown notes, I'll touch on that today. And that's what I just opened. And the unknown instructions I've got, and we're going to begin talking there. The unknown project. What?
Sorry, are you supposed to be sharing your screen?
Yes.
Don't see anything.
Ah, thank you. Whenever I'm doing that and I'm talking about something, please let me know, because I thought I was sharing my screen. The important part is you should see the unknown instructions under week 5 of the lab. And then all the other files of this project are here. Make sure that the tests, I've got the tests open. All right, the unknown project is a project we normally have students do in microbiology where they're given a bacteria and then they are supposed to figure out what species of bacteria it is. Well, we call it the unknown project. Now, online, you're not actually going to be doing that because you're not actually going to be in the lab, and I'm not actually going to give you a bacteria species. What I'm going to do is give you a number, and that number will represent one of these species over here. And everybody will have a different species. And then you're going to run different tests to try and identify this species. Does that make sense? The different tests you can run are up here. When we first came up with this online, I realized that with 20 students, it would take about 100 emails for one project for me to complete this project. And I just decided that 100 emails is too difficult, too much for one project. And so I spoke to the other instructors and said, how about if I choose the first 3 tests that you're going to run, and then from that point, you guys will be choosing each test. And that way, I can send one email giving you the gram stain. Let me highlight that. The gelatin hydrolysis test and the PR lactose test. And that will cut down the emails to the class by 60 instead of, I'll send out 1. So I guess it cuts it down 59, but 60 is close enough. And then that will make this project doable for me. The interactions between you and me will be doable. Now, the very first time, I will email you the results in Canvas, the Canvas email. But after that, you have to work totally in Unknown Notes. Let me go to that. So you come to your Unknown Notes page, click on it. There's nothing in here, but you will have an upload page. I have the speed grader page, and I can go to each student. And when a student submits something, I'll see the page that they submitted. Please only submit a document. I think I've got it set up so you can actually type in here. You don't need to, make a Word document and then submit it. But if not, just make the document and submit it. And you can make an unlimited number of submissions. I, of course, don't have the submit button. I have the speed grader button, which I can go through each of the different students. And nobody started this project, so it doesn't do that. My comment is I will be using the assignment comments to give you comments. And then if you request a test, I will be submitting that in the assignment comments. I'm going to ask you guys not to use the comment section. If you want to send a message to me, put it near the bottom of your document. Okay. And then at the very bottom of your document, you should have the test request. So if you have a test you want done, you put it at the bottom of your document. If it's at the top of the document, I'll probably see it, no problem. If it's in the middle of the document, you're going to have to wait until I read your document. And about every other day, I'll be going through the Unknown Notes pages, and all I'm going to look at is the bottom of the document, but I will see the top of the document. So if you have a test request, make sure it's at the bottom of your document. Or if you really don't want it there, you can have it at the top of the document. If it's in the middle of the document, there's no guaranteeing how soon I will find it. Any question about that? If you put something as a comment, I will ask you to remove it, put it into your document, and then I will delete it. So don't give me comments, okay? Because when there's a bunch of comments, it'll be difficult to go through it. So like I said, I will delete those comments eventually. Any questions about that? All right. So all of your work, with the exception of my first email, will be handled in the Unknown Notes. And you can just continue the page you have. Like some people copy what they have on the first page, and then they submit a second page, and at the top of that will be their first page, and then they add the stuff below on the second page. That's one way to do it. Another way is you just have the first page, which is totally separate from the second page. Your Unknown Notes page can be informal, or it could be formal. If it's formal, then it'll look very similar to your unknown report, meaning at the very end, you're going to put all the data together and then submit your unknown report. And so if you do it very formal, you just copy the unknown notes pages and then submit it in your report. And there's a few other things you need in the report, but beyond that, anyways, that's the unknown notes page. It is worth 5 points, so it will count for 1 lab assignment. Any question about any of that? All right. Let me close that down. I've got information for what you should do in the unknown notes page here. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's go back to the unknown project and the instructions. This project is worth 75 points. It is a lab project. Many microbiology classes have the identification of the bacteria or the unknown project, and you can read about the rationale. For the project, you're going to be needing to isolate the bacteria, and I'm going to just send you the number, and then you're going to pretend that you're growing it up on a petri dish, and then you're streaking it out for getting isolated colonies, and then you're streaking from streaking another plate from one isolated colony to get isolated colonies, and then you set up your culture from cells that have gone through 2 isolated colonies. So you're just pretending you're doing that. In the lab, we would have given you a mixture of 2 possible bacteria, and you need to actually streak it out and grow up one of them. But we're going to just send out 1 number, and so the beginning is just sort of pretend. So once you have a pure culture, you then run a series of tests to determine the identity of the species of bacteria. As I stated, I'm going to be picking the first 3 tests for you. After that point, you have to pick the tests that you want to run. And the only reason I did that is just to decrease the number of contacts between you and I for this project. You can use different resources to work on this text. The lab textbook is very good. Berge's manual, which you can find online. You can also find it in the reserve section of the Clark College Library. This project should be using dichotomous logic. Dichotomous logic is where you start with all the bacteria species, which I'll show you right here, all the species right here. And then you run a test separating them. Oh, where is it? There it is. Into 2 possibilities. So initially you have all the species. And then the first thing you can do is separate it with the Gram stain. And that will allow you to get Gram positives. And Gram negatives. And if it's a Gram negative, we then cross the Gram positives out. And then we do another test, such as gelatin hydrolysis. Oops, that's not a very good thing, but good enough. In which case you can get gelatin positive. It's actually gelatin hydrolysis positive, but I'm not going to write all that out. I'll go H positive. Yep. And then the other is gelatin hydrolysis negative. All right, that's dichotomous logic, where you run one test, separate your bacteria into about two possibilities, discover you have gram negative or this possibility, run another test separating your bacteria into about two possibilities. You must use dichotomous logic. On this project. If you do not, you'll get a penalty. Any question?
Do we have to show like a diagram like this?
You will,
To
but only in the unknown report.
Okay.
Okay. You don't have to show the diagram like this. You can make it in a table, and I'll discuss that in just a little bit. I guess I'll leave this just in case I want to come back. Let's go back to the unknown project. All right, so you use dichotomous logic on this project. That means you'll be doing one test at a time. If you use not dichotomous logic, you'll receive a penalty, and the biggest penalty if you use shotgun logic. And that's where you run numerous tests all at one time. You should detail your activities that you do, and that is keep daily notes. And how you do that is in your unknown notes pages. You don't need to add the day, because that will be added in the unknown notes page automatically. But you should record what activities you do, meaning which tests you're running, what your observations are for that test, what the interpretation is. So if the test tube comes back yellow, that's an observation, that is a result. Your interpretation is the conclusion. The test was positive. You should also give your thoughts. For example, in your unknown notes pages, besides giving the daily activity you did, what test you ran, what the observations for that test were, what the interpretations were, you should give the species still under consideration. Is that clear? So initially, at the very beginning, you can just say all the species possible, and then you're going to narrow it down. Students usually do the gram stain next, so you can say the gram negatives. So these species are possible. And then after gelatin hydrolysis, let's say it's gelatin hydrolysis positive. So it's only 4 species. Okay, any question about that? And that's how you narrow it down. The PR lactose would be, all of them would be negative. So that doesn't actually help on this case. But then you look at this table and you say, okay, I've got to narrow down to 4 species. I need to run a test to narrow down these 4 species. You could run PR sucrose. That narrows it 1 to 3. That's not the best narrowing, but it is acceptable. You could also run urease. That narrows it to 3 to 1. Let me see if I can find a better one that narrows it 2 to 2. I think the MR test does that. So if it's MR positive, it'll be these 2. If it's MR, nope, that doesn't do it. That's 3 to 1. So that's not the one I was looking for. Maybe it's the VP test. It could be the VP test. It may narrow it 2 to 2. There are 2 negatives. There is 1 positive. I'll make that a different color. However, one of them is a variable. The variable means that the results can vary. It could be positive or negative. Any question about that?
Is this the spreadsheet we'll be using, or do we have a different one?
This is the spreadsheet I think you'll be using. You might have a
Okay.
newer version, I'm not positive, but it'll be very similar to this one. The only major difference was Catalase. I added that to your spreadsheet, which won't help you for this case, but it helps you with the gram positives. Anyways, that's how you could do it. You could run the Voges-Proskauer test, and if it's positive, you know it's these two red ones. So you've narrowed it down to two. The trouble is, if it's negative, you can't rule that out. You have to say that variable is a possibility. And so you've only narrowed it down to, excuse me, it's supposed to be yellow. You've only narrowed it down to 3. Okay. And like I said, I believe there is a test you can run to narrow it down to 2, but I'm not seeing it immediately and I don't want to look further. Okay. So that's how you narrow the species down. You should use this table for figuring out what the species is. There are a few changes in this table, not many, but there are a few, where we have changed the results to make it so that you can determine what species it is. I don't remember the case, but it's someplace like Pseudomonas aeruginosa. We've got it positive here, and in reality it's negative, and we have it this way so you can identify the species. Okay, there's only a few changes where the results in this table are incorrect, meaning if you look in Berge's manual, you'll see that this table is wrong. In all of these cases, the table has been changed to make it so you can identify the species. So use this table to identify the species. Any question about that? All right, let's go back to the project. So this report should be, when you're finished, typewritten. The report, not important. You should use 12-point font. You should not double space. Please do it 12-point font. If you notice, I have glasses. If you make it 10-point font or smaller, I'll have a hard time reading it. So please use 12-point font. You should have each day in your report with the descriptions of the test you ran, the information you hope to gain from the test, the observation you got from that test, and that could be in a different day, and the conclusions you made from that test. Most of the tests, when you run it, it will take the test 2 days before you will get the results. So you request the test, and then 2 days later, you will get the results. And you can give your interpretations at the same time as your results. And then you should give the species under consideration. Very rarely would you get the test on the same day you request it. There are a few tests that you do get the test results right away, like the oxidase test, the catalase test, and the pigment test. Most of the other tests take longer than getting it. Like if you went into the lab, you would do the test and you get the results immediately. Most of the tests require an incubation period, most of them for 2 days. There are a few where you incubate for like 18 hours to 24 hours. Not very many, but there are a few. And there is one that requires 5 days of incubation, and then one that requires 7 days of incubation. And that is why I want you to do the gelatin test right away, because that one is the one that takes 7 days to incubate. You should not omit any data in your report to make your project look better. If you made a mistake, just add the data, and you can state in the report that this is a mistake and I wasn't thinking in the correct logic or wasn't going down the right path and realized my error and then I changed. You just say something like that. So I can take a look at the results that you've turned in. So I will know if you're not reporting all your data. So you should not make your project look better. You may include drawings, photos, and tables. They are actually very helpful. They are not required. I will send you photos of your test results. So you can put that in your unknown notes page, and you may put it in your unknown project, but that is not required. If you do add drawings, photos, and tables, they must be completely labeled and discuss where you got those photos from. If it's just me, you got the photo from, no big deal. But if you get it from the internet, you should put a in-text reference for where you got it below the photo. You do not need to discuss the step-by-step details for each test you run. All you need to do is state the name of the test. For example, if you're doing the gram stain, you just said, I ran the gram stain. It's all you need to do. You do not need to give me the step-by-step details for doing the gram stain. I know the step-by-step details anyways. All your work should be your own work. You'll each have a different bacteria, so there'd be no point in using somebody else's work anyways. It is mandatory that your report include a table or a figure outlining the process you use to identify your unknown organism. An example suitable table is provided on the next page. So initially, all the species were under consideration, and somebody should make a note there. And then they had the gram-positive cocci is what they had, and so they put all the gram-positive cocci that are possible, which are all the gram-positives, by the way. And then the next test they ran was the catalase test, and the catalase test was positive, so that narrowed it down to 4 possibilities. The next test they ran was the PR mannitol test, and that narrowed it down to 3 possibilities. They then did the PR glucose test, and this was acid, that narrowed it down to 2 possibilities. And then they ran the citrate test. The results were positive, and that narrowed it down to Micrococcus varians. So that's the organism they identified and then wrote their report on. You are allowed to run one confirmation test. So you could have the table here with one additional test to confirm that it's Micrococcus varians. Let me see, what would be a good test for Micrococcus varians? This is the pigment test would be a good test for Micrococcus varians. And come here. Let me go through the example here. It's too bad that I didn't continue working on this one, but let me unhighlight that. So we had the gram-positives here. So that was the first. And what was the next test that was on the table? Anyone remember?
No, I don't remember.
Catalase positive. So this is the catalase, I think. Let me scroll up. Yep. So it narrows it down to these 4. And then they did, I think, PR glucose. Is that right?
I think it was it the mannitol?
PR mannitol first? I don't remember. Yeah,
I
PR
think so.
mannitol. And it's PR mannitol negative. This table may not be set up on this chart, but let's try it anyways. So PR mannitol, so it's these 2 and this one. And then they did the PR glucose and it was A. So these 3, it's going to be this one and that one. And then they did the citrate test, which I think X, but it might be Y. It's X. And I believe it was citrate positive. All right, so we've identified the species. And this is how you do it. You figure out what the possibilities are, keep narrowing your test. We have it down to 2. We do the citrate test and we identify it as Micrococcus varians. And like I said, you could do a confirmation test, and a good one to run for this species is the pigment test, which I think right here. No, it's right here. And so it's that one. We weren't even considering Micrococcus luteus because it fell out with, what is that one? PR glucose. And Staphylococcus aureus, we weren't considering either because it wasn't mannitol negative or, well, I guess it wasn't mannitol negative. Okay. Any questions about that?
What's the average amount of tests that should be ran? Is it pretty similar across the board, or is it just kind of,
It depends
it's
on
like
your luck. Depends on
okay,
what species you have and then which test you run. Most students get the unknown identified at 3, 4, or 5 tests. So you have to run at least 3 tests after I give you 3 tests. Some students are very lucky and they only run usually 2 tests after I give them 3. Very rare, very, very rarely. I've had a student who only ran 1 test and they picked a really strange test and the result was positive and it was the only possibility for something. What was that? But usually that's very rare that happens. Most terms, most students, even the best students, the luckiest students have to run 2 tests. And like I said, unlucky students may have to run 5 or 6 tests.
and then sorry for all the questions.
After
Shoot,
my
what was I
3
gonna
tests.
say?
Go on.
Sorry, I lost it. If it comes back to me, I'll ask.
Okay. So use this table to narrow it. And remember, you want to run 1 test at a time. And you just keep this table. When you're doing this table, remember a V means you have to consider it as both a positive or a negative, or in this case, both a negative or an A. So if you get a V, you have to consider that as a possibility. Okay? Any question about that? A V, once again, means variable. And ND means non-determined. You can treat an ND as a variable, and that should be stated there. Hopefully in your copy, it's stated there, meaning treat an ND as a variable. An ND is actually a test that we do not run for this species. Like on the gram negatives, we do not run PR inulin. So all of the results are ND. And you should just treat that as a variable. Very rarely have I ever had a student who had a gram negative and asked for the PR inulin test. And so I just had to figure out which result to give, positive or negative. But my point is, you have to treat the ND as a variable. And the ND actually is a test that is not ran for that species. So for example, well, for Micrococcus luteus, PR inulin is not run. So that's why it's ND there. So we have no data on that because this test is not normally ran on Micrococcus luteus. Any question about that? And then down here, it tells you what everything stands for, with the exception of the A, which we only have A and AG, and then negative with the PR glucose test, the PR lactose test, the PR sucrose test, the PR mannitol test, and maybe the PR inulin. Nope, the PR inulin is positive or negative. These tests, you can get three possibilities. You can get PR glucose, you can get AG, and that stands for acid and gas. Let me show you. Let me go to an older term. Okay, this is acid and gas. Acid because it's yellow in color. And yellow means it's acidic. And then gas because the inverted Durham tube, which you can't see in this one. Oh, maybe you can see a little bit of it right there. There's the inverted Durham tube there. The inverted Durham tube has collected a gas bubble. So this one is AG. If it's just yellow, no gas bubble, it's just A. And if it's pink or reddish, it is negative. Any question about that? And you can get that information by looking at the test. Scroll down to the different tests. It's under week 5 lab unknown tests. These are all the different possible tests you can run. The difference is the PR glucose is not here. PR mannitol, PR lactose, PR sucrose, PR inulin is not here. We have PR carbohydrates because each of these PR tests, they only differ in the sugar. And so it's in here as PR carbohydrate. And then this is telling you about each of the different PR sugars, like PR glucose and PR mannitol. Hopefully this will download. It's sure taking its time. But the PR carbohydrate is what we have for PR glucose, PR sucrose, PR lactose, PR mannitol, and PR inulin. And this does not seem to be working. Let me do it again. It's still not working. I'm not sure what the problem is. See if I can download it this way. Yep, downloaded fine that way. So there's the document. And you'll note the tube will be reddish or pinkish or yellow. Yellow with gas will be AG, just yellow alone, A, and then no yellow color, pinkish or reddish, will be negative. It tells you about the test up here. Each test has a single fermentable carbohydrate, glucose, lactose, sucrose, mannitol, inulin. It's possible there are other carbohydrates, but we don't have it on our table. And the bacteria, if it grows into the tube, can ferment that sugar. And if it does ferment the sugar, it will become acid, changing the color to yellow. If it ferments the sugar and produces gas, you'll have Ag. If it ferments it and it's just yellow, it's just A. If it doesn't ferment the sugar, it'll be negative. And there's the procedure for the tube. You should always look at these results to find out how long the tube needs to be incubated. For the PR carbohydrates, they need to be incubated for 18 hours. And generally, I'll give you the results 18 to 24 hours, but they can run for 48 hours. Okay. And there we have an Ag tube and a negative tube. And there's the procedure you use to set up the test. All right, any question about that?
We choose to use pictures for our report. Are we using pictures from like these tests right here from the samples?
You may. I will also send you a picture, and you may
Oh,
use the pictures I send to you.
okay.
It is helpful, but not required that you put the pictures in your unknown notes page. But like I said, all you need to do is say the tube return yellow with a gas bubble in the inverted Durham tube. And that means that this is, the interpretation is AG. Okay. All right, let's close that down. And I just want to see, did that ever, it finally downloaded. It just took a very long time. I'm going to guess that somebody at Clark College is working on Canvas, and so it's very slow. All right, let's go back to our instructions. So you've identified the species. Like I said, you may do one test beyond this, which I call a confirmation test. If you do more than one, you'll get a penalty. If you don't identify your unknown, you won't get full credit either. I don't think I give a penalty, but you don't have it identified. No plagiarism on this project. If it is plagiarized, you'll get at least 5% penalty. You could get 0% penalty, meaning you'll get not a 0, but 100% penalty, meaning you get no points on the project. Generally, this will be your own work, so it'd be hard to plagiarize. I don't see where I've got that, but you do need to have, there it is right here. You do need to have near the end of the project a paragraph describing your the species you've identified. So usually what students do is they have their daily notes, and then they give the table identifying their species, the steps they use to identify the species, and then they say, my species is this, and then they give a paragraph talking about their species. Don't make it more than half of a page. You just need one paragraph describing your bacteria. Most people get this from like going to Wikipedia and then talking about their species. Don't directly copy from any place, because that's plagiarizing, but write it up in your words. But you do need a paragraph discussing your species. Something like what diseases that microorganisms cause, the mode of transmission of that bacteria, common sources where you can find the bacteria, various treatments for it, and then just any interesting information about the bacteria. You only need a paragraph, don't have more than half a page. Do not exceed one type page for that, otherwise you'll get a penalty. The project should also be a certain length. And here we're only talking about the text of the document. It does not include the pictures. It does not include your references, which will be small anyways, because usually students only need one reference to tell me where they got their paragraph describing the microorganism from. However, if you do use a picture you get from the internet, that should be in your references, as well as the reference underneath, the in-text reference underneath the picture. So give your reference section where you list your sources that need to be cited. Usually it's only one. You can use any format you want, APA or MLA or any other format, as long as it's a legal format. You'll be graded mainly on the logic you use to write up the report and do the report. I'll show you exactly how it'd be graded. The completeness of the report, the organization, clarity, and neatness of the report, it'd be hard to not have proper laboratory technique because you're going to simply ask for a test and then I'll send a picture of that test. All right. For those of you who want more detail on the project, this is how you would do it if you were to come into the lab and actually streak it out. We'd give you a tube containing 2 bacteria species, and you would streak it out on a TSA plate, a sodium azide plate, and a McConkey's plate. McConkey's only grows gram negative, sodium azide only grows gram positive, and TSA grows both. You then take a colony and then streak it out again so that you would send your bacteria through 2 colony formation events, and then set up your pure culture, your stock culture from that. Setting up the stock culture. And then after that, you use the stock culture to run your tests. So I'm just going to assume you can pretend that you guys are going to do this. I'll give you a number. You can streak it out again, set up your stock culture, and then use your stock culture, which is just to pretend to set up each test. Any question about that? Like I said, in the lab, you do this. Here's an example of following dichotomous logic. If you're a little weak on dichotomous logic, you can work through this and then answer the questions. These questions do not need to be turned in. Okay, this is just some questions for using dichotomous logic. I think we have a lab, which you guys have not done yet, which also gives you another example of using dichotomous logic. So if you do not understand dichotomous logic, you should work through these examples and discuss it with me until you understand dichotomous logic, because this project requires the use of dichotomous logic. If you don't use dichotomous logic, you'll get a penalty. Let's talk about the grading of this project. Hopefully this will download better, although I think I've got it on my computer already. I'm not seeing that here. Oh, well, I'll go to the online page. The report grading. Let me open that on another page. So you'll be graded on your utilization of resources. If you use excess media or you run irrelevant tests that do not help you identify your species, you will have 1 here, assuming you only have 1, in which case you'll get 8 out of 10. If you have no irrelevant tests, no excess media, then you get 10 out of 10. You have 2 tests that did not help you identify the species, then you only get 6 out of 10. What's dichotomous logic used when you run your test? If dichotomous logic was used, you'll get 10 out of 10. If you have 1 excess test, meaning you ask for 2 tests at the same time, you get 8 out of 10. If you use shotgun logic, you'll get 2 points out of 10. With shotgun logic, you're just saying, well, let's just run all of these tests at one time and hope that we get the results that I want. Okay? And they call it shotgun because you're shooting with a shotgun and you're just hitting everything. All right, were all relevant tests used? If you omit 1 test that you should have ran, you get 8 out of 10. You don't omit any tests, you get 10 out of 10. Very rarely do I have a student who omits more than 1 test, but perhaps there's a student who started the project very late and I determined they need a mini test to run before they would be able to identify their species, in which case they'll get 4 out of 10. But very rarely is there that. Usually it's only 1 test that's omitted. Were the correct species included at each step? As you run a test, you should state what species are still under consideration after that test. If all species are correct, you'll get 10 out of 10. If 1 species is incorrect, you'll get 8 out of 10. If you have 2 or 3 incorrect species, you'll get 6 out of 10. If you have over 5 incorrect species, and that would be if you didn't list the species, usually, then you'll get 2 out of 10. Complete list of the report. If all the information is presented, you'll get 10 out of 10. If something is missing from your report and it's minor, you'll get 8 out of 10. If there's 2 to 3 incidents of missing information, there would be 6 out of 10. For example, if you didn't give any references, you'd be 8 out of 10. Effectiveness and clear communication, where your English, grammar, spelling, and punctuation all good. If it's all good, everything is excellent, you get 15 out of 15. If there's a few errors, but they're minor, and I understand your logic, you get 13 out of 15. If you have some errors, but some of them are major, and I do not understand your logic, you get 7 out of 15. You have lots of errors, hard to read the project, it's 1 out of 15. If at the end you correctly identify your species, you'll get 10 out of 10. If you identify your species and it's within the same group or type, it'll be 7 out of 10. If it's outside the group, but the gram stain is correct, it would be 5 out of 10. For example, if it was Micrococcus luteus and you call it Streptococcus pyogenes, it's outside the group, but it's in the correct gram stain, so it's 5 out of 10. If you get the gram stain incorrect, it's 0 out of 10. I've never had a student get the gram stain incorrect. The total possible points is 75, and you'll get your points out of 75. Any questions on the grading? Any questions on the project?
When
Okay.
we submit the notes each time we do it, are you going to be providing feedback at that time on like our process?
Not feedback on your process. So if you're saying, am I doing the process wrong? I will not give you feedback in your unknown notes. With the unknown notes, I will simply give you the results usually for the test that you request. Very rarely, like the first time, I may say something like, you should do this for your unknown notes page. And usually what I'll just do is copy this right here for what should be in the unknown notes page. Okay. So in your unknown notes page, you should record your results and interpretation for the test, including the results and interpretation for the tests that I run. That should be put, meaning that I've selected and will send you the results to. You should put that in your unknown notes page. You should also put the date that the test was ran, and the first test hopefully will be started. Well, the gelatin hydrolysis hopefully will be started tonight. You should also put your unknown number in your unknown notes page. If there's no number and then you request a test result, I will tell you I'd be more than happy to send you the results, but you don't have your unknown number in here. And so I'm not sure what results to send. So please tell me what unknown number is. So put your results, your interpretations, the species under consideration, and then at the bottom, put your test requests in your unknown notes page. So everything should be recorded in your unknown notes page. That includes the 3 tests that I have chosen for you at the beginning. And this will be worth 5 points if it's all done correctly. All right, any questions about your unknown notes page? Like I said, this can be informal or it can be formal. Let me see if I can find somebody from a previous term just to show you. The trouble is I've got that graded. Let me remove the grade. Stopping my share because I'm going to open up the unknown project. Oh, come on. There we go. Come on, page. Boy, Canvas is really slow. Let's remove that. This person has done it very formally. Let me share my screen now. All right, so this person has submitted unknown notes pages very formally. You can see she submitted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's go to the first one. So there's the unknown number, the name of the student, day 1, day 2, when they started the test, 5-7 for the gram stain, 5-2 for the gelatin hydrolysis, 5-8 for the lactose fermentation test. And then the results. I guess they're asking for the methyl red test, but let's go to the last page. So she just added everything here and she's being very formal about it. But the nice part is if you're formal, you can just copy this and submit it for your report. There are some things that need to be added in the report that are not required in the unknown notes, like the table identifying the species of bacteria. She put this in the unknown notes page that is not required in your unknown notes page. I'm not sure why that's there, but that's not terribly important. And then the report should also have the references and a paragraph discussing the species of bacteria the student has identified. All right, any questions about that? Let me go to one that's come on. I have to stop the share because I want to put the grade back in this, although it's not terribly important because this is a past term. So the students already got their grade. I just want to keep the record. This student's pretty formal too, so let me look elsewhere. This student is not as formal. Move the grade here and then show you this one. Oh, and close that down. All right. So once again, the student has their name, the number, and then the test that was ran. I'm not sure what that is. Maybe just the gram-negative bacilli under consideration. And the student is formal enough she could copy this and put it in the report, but you'll need to add more things to it for the report. For example, she doesn't have the species under, well, she does right there. She doesn't always have the species under consideration, but with this test, she's narrowed it down to 2 species under consideration. All right, any question about that? Any question about the, am I sharing this? Was I sharing?
No, you're not sharing right now, but
Did
you,
I
I mean,
share
you,
the last student's inform?
yes,
Okay, good.
yes.
All right, so
When do we expect which number we are?
I can give it tonight, although there's no real reason to send it tonight because it'll be a week before I give you the results, and it probably will be a little less confusing if I send it all to you at one time, meaning I'll give you the number and then I will give you the results for the tests that I've selected. Okay. So I'll probably wait for 1 week to today before giving you the number and the results for the species, the tests for the that I've chosen. Okay. Students often get confused by this project, and if you get confused, just contact me and I will try and get you started and help you with it. Don't wait to the very end to start on this project, because if you wait to the end, you won't have enough time to finish the project. This project will take usually about 2 to 3 weeks to finish. So if you wait to the very end, you may not finish the project. All right, any other questions about the unknown project? If not, I think I'm done with it. So hopefully you've gone through the unknown project instructions already, and you can begin working on the, let's see if I have that there. On these other files here, it's not terribly important to look at these until you are working on the project, you'll need to look at the unknown list, obviously, while you're working on the project. And you should probably look at the dichotomous game plan if you're not certain what a dichotomous game plan is. And then obviously look at all these files before you write up your report, especially the grading and the instructions, and obviously the unknown list. And then something that I'm going to give you, which will help you in writing up the unknown project, is this is a sample journal of the unknown project. Boy, this is really slow. Why do I need to restart Firefox? That's not Firefox. Oh, this doesn't look good. Oh, it's still running. See if that's, I can't get that one to go. Let's try that one more time. All right, this is a sample journal of what your journal will look like. It'll be a little different because it was written by Travis Kubota, which is a teacher in 2004. And you'll note that you're only going to work on 2 organisms. This instructor was initially working on 2 organisms, which you won't do, but I think I've removed one of the organisms. So on February 1st, you streaked out 2 TSA plates, 2 EMB plates. Normally you streak out Azi and McConkeys to get isolated colonies. You looked at the different isolated colonies, picked one of the isolated colonies and picked another colony here. That's not isolated, but streaked them out another time. And on this day, for day 4, February 6, 2004, he took colony stock B out of the stock and then used it to gram stain. So he ran the gram stain on this day. And there's his results, the what you observe. And here's his interpretation. It's gram positive cocci. On day 5, there's no observations because he didn't run a previous test where he looked at the observations on day 5, and he decided to run the catalase test. So that's his activities. Normally the observation is the result. He's putting the results and the conclusions together. He saw bubbling. And then the conclusion is it's catalase positive. I don't even see where he has the results here, but maybe he's got a picture of it. Nope. It's very easy to just separate out on your daily activities, your observations, the activities. This would be the test you're running on that day, and then your conclusions. You may want to have your observations right on top of your conclusions because this will be your observation. Your results, the conclusion is your interpretation of the observations. On many days when you're writing your unknown notes page, and should be this way in your journal also, you will be setting up a test on one day, and then 2 days later, or maybe 5 days later, or 7 days later, depending on what the test is, possibly a day later, you will be having your observations and conclusions because you will not get the results when you request the test. Most of the tests take 2 days to incubate. Okay. All right. Any other questions? So this is an example. Here he's going through the different tests. and the possible species is Staphylococcus aureus. So someplace along the line, hopefully he's given the species under consideration. Right here, Staphylococcus or Micrococcus. Those are two families or genuses, but he's narrowed it down to those two families. All right, any question about any of that? This is just a sample journal. There are a few errors in it. Not errors in it, things that you should not do. For example, he was running 2 bacteria species. You won't have 2 species.
In the activities section, it's in this report, it's pretty detailed of like how they actually ran a test. Is that necessary for our report?
You're saying in this journal, he's talking about the different tests?
Well, if you scroll up
Where?
in one of the activities, it said like I dropped hydrogen peroxide on a
Peroxide
slide.
slide.
Is that
Yeah.
something we have to include as well?
No, all you need to do is say I ran the catalase test. Okay. That's all you need to do. You don't
Okay,
need to say
thank you.
the exact steps of the test. He didn't finish this identification, and hopefully you will. Although that looks like it's finished, he narrowed it down to Staphylococcus aureus. And I'm not sure why he even ran these 2 tests, because he's already identified it as Staphylococcus aureus. So this could be one confirmation test that it's Staphylococcus aureus or S. bovis and E. Enterococcus faecalis, and these have already been excluded. Actually, they were excluded by the pigment test. So this would be one error. You don't want to do that, and that is he's running 2 confirmation tests. And I don't even know why he ran this one, because he didn't do anything different from the bioesculin test. And so you will only be allowed to do 1 confirmation test. Once you've identified the species, you can run 1 confirmation test. If you run more than 1, there will be a penalty. And there's his paragraph discussing the organism, and there's his references. All right, any question about this project?
Yeah, sorry, I have another one. I don't recall if you said, do we have to run a confirmation test or that's just optional?
No, that's optional. Once you've identified your species, if you want, you can end it. If you want to run a confirmation test, you may run 1 confirmation test after you've identified your species. So that is an optional test. Okay. All right. I think I'm done. If there's no further questions, I'm just going to log off.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.